What's up, viewers, subscribers, and agents alike? This your boy Enlightened Luciferian Prince coming at y'all once again. This will be my last upload as of the date of this recording. I hope everybody's in a good spirit, good health, and good wealth. And with wealth, I don't mean just substance, I mean peace of mind. So, with that being said, in the current state of affairs in the world, I know I hear a lot of people say they don't pay attention to what the news says, or they don't really buy into what's said. But I have a difference of opinion, and I come from a historical approach, and I come from a current approach. And in reality, I think that when you watch the news, if you do, or if you don't, and you have sense enough to understand what they're saying, you eat the meat and spit out the bones. Because irrespective of this corporate manipulation, whatever they're telling you, they're still telling you something. Whether you choose to not pay attention to it is a choice in and of yourself. So, before I proceed with this video, I would like to say, please, remove your children from the immediate vicinity. Or if you have headphones on, whatever makes you feel comfortable. Like I said before, teenagers, hell, we already know what type of the music they listen to, so it don't matter. But sensitive ears, you know. The name of this video is called Emergency Rule. And this is just what has taken place historically to what basically is still relevant to this day. Although these things have taken place well over 100 years ago. Here is some fundamental facts that are and have been spoken about, as I said before, on my channel. And they pretty much still stand to this day. Even though all of the entities that actually, with very few exceptions, that implemented these policies still stand. But let us get into some history. Notice what it says when I'm getting ready to say. Current law, permanently codified at United States Code, Section 95A and subsection 95B. Let us go all the way back to this eventful day, October 6, 1917. However, the people who have read the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, the one that is unadulterated, basically know that this has happened. What took place way before October 6, 1917. In the early 1900s, when a lot of the industrialism has hit this country, that still basically is the same corporate monster that it was in its day, that it is today. It's the same thing, but inflation has caused it to basically gratify itself and change its form, but it's still the same practice. In the early 1900s, I think I'll go back to 1901, where a lot of innovations started to come into the country post-Reconstruction. There was a groups at the time, to a lot of them, canked out. And a lot of them particularly wanted to have a grasp and control on people's lives. And that was a very, very relevant fact, which still stands to this day. So I said, well, how can we corner the market? Well, let's fast forward to, without all the intricate details, to the year of 1912, And I tell people I bought the Titanic for a reason, and no conspiracy involved. You can actually look at it for yourself for what it's worth, that particularly there were certain particular people who were supposed to be on that boat, the Titanic. If you look at the word Titan, if you look at the word Titan in and of itself, according to a mythological sense, that was the mount basically of Olympus where the gods were supposed to sit. So these people called themselves Titans because they were financial giants. But just so happens a few of them missed the boat. Just so happened the boat went down. Long story short, Same year, there was supposed to be legislation. Uh, there's supposed to be legislation passed, and the legislation that was supposed to be passed in favor of the Titans, which were the financiers or the industrialists, which emerged into capitalism. Then, what happened was Mr. Woodrow Wilson, particularly with his fickle ass, was bought out for a certain amount, for like $40,000. And today, if you inflate that, if you actually do an inflation calendar, you'll see exactly how much it is today. So at that time, before inflation even came into play, before Federal Reserve, fractional reserve banking even came into play, that was a fucking grip. Because you got what you got for dollar. There was no such thing as taxation because it never even was implemented. So hang with me. So now you turn around and you get to year 1913, which is the year the Federal Reserve Act was passed, right? Right. Now, this all has happened within the span of a decade and some change. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, let's fast forward to, let's see, 4 years later, you have respectively October 6th, 1917. Woodrow Wilson, because he was paid and he had to do what he had to do because he took money as a bribery. And this was, y'all believe in these individuals called presidents, but they will take a bribe in a heartbeat. He submits to Congress and passes the Trading with the Enemy Act. Quote, this is the legal definition, an act to define, regulate, and punish trading with the enemy, and for other purposes. And that word, other purposes, is quotated. Congress, with this act, defined who was considered the enemy. They was to be considered the enemy. And this act gave the government total authority over these individuals to see what they saw fit, to do with them as they saw fit. This act, Section 2, Subdivision C, in the middle and again at the bottom of the page, other than citizens of the United States. That's what it said. Other than citizens of the United States. Section 5B, other than credits to be executed wholly within the United States. Note, federal law states what a United States citizen is. We already know that. We passed that. We well into this series. Now, note also, Franklin Delano Roosevelt served on Wilson's staff. March 3rd, 1933, President Hoover received proposed executive order from the Federal Reserve Board, whereas the nation's banking institutions are being subjected to heavy withdrawals of currency, for hoarding, and whereas these conditions have created a national emergency. Whereas it is provided in Section 5B of the Act of October 6, 1917, as amended, which means rules have changed, but they still apply. The president may investigate, regulate, or prohibit under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe by means of licenses or otherwise any transactions in foreign exchange and export, hoarding, melting, or earmarking of gold and silver coin, currency, or bullion. And March 4th, 1933. See how methodical this is? Franklin Delano Roosevelt inaugural addresses for war powers. I am prepared under my constitutional duty to recommend the measures that a stricken nation in the midst of a stricken world may require. I shall ask the Congress for something that they already pre-approved, for one remaining instrument to meet the crises, broad executive power to wage a war against the emergency, as great as the power that would be given to me as if we were in fact invaded by a foreign foe. So you're asking for war powers, but you're asking for war powers in what context? Because obviously you're not being invaded by a foreign foe, because World War II didn't start till what, 1941? Why the fuck you asking for this shit in 1933? You're asking for it because you want to wage war against the populace of people. If y'all draw the lines, you'll see exactly what I'm saying is very correct. But some people might disagree. It's fine. March 6th, 2 days later, 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt issues Proclamation 2039. What year we in? 2021? Oh, shit. Just saying. Whereas provided by Section B of the Act, October 6, 1917, as amended, that the president may investigate, regulate, or prohibit under such rules and regulations as he may prescribe by means of licenses or otherwise any transaction in foreign exchange, and the licenses or otherwise any transactions of foreign exchange in the export, hoarding, melting, or earmarking of gold or silver coins, bullion, or currency. And now, emphasize, therefore I, lowercase, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do hereby proclaim, order, direct, and declare that from Monday to the 6th of March to Thursday to the 9th of March, 1933, a banking holiday. And during that said period, all banking transactions will be suspended. See Banking Holiday, Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. March 9th, 3 days later, the president receives pre-approved war powers and ownership of gold is made illegal. 73rd Congress, Session 1, Chapter 1. The actions, regulation, rules, licenses, and orders of proclamations heretofore or hereafter made, promulgated, made, or issued by the President of the United States as Secretary of Treasury since March 4, 1933. Follow the chain now. Pursuant to the authority conferred by Subdivision B of Sections 5 of the Act of October 6, 1917 as amended, are hereby approved and conferred. 48 Stat 1. Section 3, Section 11 of the Federal Reserve Act is amended by adding the end of therefore, subsection N, whenever the judgment of the Secretary of the Treasury, his discretion. Now notice why I always tell people it all goes back to the source. Secretary of the Treasury in his discretion may require any and all individuals, partnerships, associations, and corporations to pay and deliver to the Treasurer of the United States any and all gold coin, gold bullion, gold certificates owned by such individuals, partnerships, associations, and corporations. March 9, 1933, Senate document number 43, 73rd Congress, first session, states the ownership of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government. I need to read that again for people who missed that. Senate document number 43, 73rd Congress, first session states the ownership of all property is in the state. Individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of government. An example, law amounting to mere user, and use must be in accordance with law and subordinate to the necessities of the state. This is congressional record, people. I didn't make this shit up. 1935-36, Supreme Court rules in the following cases unconstitutional. 5-6-35, Railroad Retirement Board versus Alton Railroad Code. 295 U.S. 330, 521-35 ALA, Schletter's Poultry Group versus United States. 295 United States 495, 1635 United States versus Butler. 296 U.S. 15-1836 Carter versus Carter, Coal Company. 298 United States 238 Moorhead versus New York, X-Red, and Tipaldo. These are Supreme Court cases. 298 U.S.S. 87. Let us fast forward. 1937 to 1938. After cries that Franklin Delano Roosevelt was trying to stack the court resignation and death allowed Roosevelt to appoint enough justices of his political belief to reverse their previous decisions on peacetime constitutional barriers to the socialist wartime agenda and were removed, the original understanding doctrine was replaced by the doctrine of the Constitution that it was an evolutionary documentation. That's why you hear people saying that shit all the time, because it was based upon something they solely don't understand, but it paired it because indoctrination and basically subjugation. Let's fast forward all the way to July 24th, 1973. So we're saying from 1938 to 1973. You, the historical people who love to go through history and do your research, you'll see it yourself that this is not an accident. A special committee on determination of national emergency. A special committee on determination of national emergency, Senate Report 93-849. Since March 9th, 1933, the United States has been in a state of declared national emergency. These proclamations give force to 470 provisions of federal law. These hundreds of statutes delegate to the president extraordinary powers ordinarily exercised by Congress, which would affect the lives of American citizens, and a host of all-encompassing powers ordinarily exercised by Congress, which affects the lives of American citizens, and a host of the vast range of powers taken together, confer enough authority to rule this country without reference to normal constitutional process. September 14th, 1976. Public Law 94-412 of the 94th Congress to terminate certain authorities. Now, that doesn't mean the laws, that means people. With respect to national emergency still in effect. So the Special Committee of Termination of National Emergency hearing wasn't worth a fuck. And to provide for orderly implementation and termination of future national emergencies. Notice what it said, future national emergencies. The provisions of this act shall not apply to the following provisions of law, the powers and authorities conferred thereto, and actions taken thereunder. Subsection 1, Section 5B of the Act of October 6, 1917. Now, this is in the year 1976, as amended by United States Code 95A, 50 United States Code Appellate Court, subsection 5B. Conclusion. Now, I know this might be a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, especially agents, because they're going to swear that it's conspiracy theory. But the conclusion, Americans are governed by statutes codified at United States Code Title 12, 95A and 95B, which originated from the Act of March 9th, 1933, and the Act of October 6, 1917, as amended, giving executive board war powers over the people. And you just learned that in less than 20 minutes. I didn't make this stuff up, people. This is the reason why you need to gain more understanding on why you're doing what you're doing in these processes. It's deeper than you know. These are statutes and codes that are on that are on a national database that you can look up at any time. But how many people wake up out of their bed and want to say, I want to go research law? Not too many. And I told people this before, and I told them this in the strictest sense of it. I said, well, two things you can do when you go to school. You can either not go, or you can learn about all this stuff that they want you to know, such as reading, writing, arithmetic, history, basic math, algebra, calculus, you name it. Biology, all that stuff. Whatever you want. History, which we know that we ain't going to go there with any of it. But the number one thing they never taught you about in school, if you did go, those who didn't, was law. See, they gave us that false sense of, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. How many people became lawyers when they actually said that shit? Or anybody else that said that for that reason? Because the knowledge you were given wasn't applicable to your actual venture into going into it. See, your actual venture into going in it meant that you had to have money. And we all know in high society, if you want to go to a nice prestigious school, you have to have money and connections. That's why you have never been educated about law. In less than 20 minutes. The only thing you ever taught about law was to obey it. Not to study it, not to go try to find it anywhere, just to obey it. And many of us, through our life cycle, Well, some of us. I kind of wandered off that path. I'll admit it. But most of us in society, the indoctrinated, stick by it. I'm not saying do I disobey them? No. But I have done shit. Yeah. And that's why I started learning this stuff. Because it gave me a selective response and a more educated approach on how to deal with it. And not have to worry about breaking it ever again. That's right. So, take my words into consideration. You know, if you wish to replay the video at a later time, get full and proper understanding, so be. If you don't like what I have to say, well, again, I didn't make this stuff. I just respond accordingly and intellectually about how it's actually operating over us. And the object is to put yourself over it. Now, the average person will try to misconstrue that statement and say, so would you plan on overthrowing the government? Well, I can't overthrow my own conscience. That's where my government begins, within myself. Not a construct. So, anyone who wants to reach for that point, now or in the future, it's a moot point. I can't be anti-self because I govern me. And that's the object of why I try to tell y'all, that's why y'all need to start governing yourself. First time viewing this channel, like, subscribe. You don't like what I have to say? Oh well. But the truth will never fail. Peace, light, love. Y'all take care.